Here's your wrestling news for December 14th, 2021. And your headlines for today include Bobby Lashley's Underdog entry into WWE title contention on Raw and the aftermath for Day 1. Is WWE planning to align Bobby Lashley with Gable Steveson soon? Lots of empty seats at WWE Raw in St. Paul this week. Tony Khan leaks about upcoming huge AEW debuts. Matt Hardy suggests that WWE made a mistake with Jeff Hardy's drug test before releasing him. Jeff Hardy finally breaks silence after WWE release, teases huge match, big name in wrestling wants Jeff Hardy to leave professional wrestling. The Young Bucks react to possibly facing the Hardy Boyz in AEW. Becky Lynch enhances her heel status on Raw ahead of Day 1, suffers embarrassing botch during Brawl on Raw. Has WWE decided to derail Finn Balor's momentum? Alpha Academy takes advantage of the Rk-Bro-Nament postponement on Raw. Otis scores this week's biggest WWE Raw upset, and more. We are kicking off today with Monday Night Raw, and the central story this week was Bobby Lashley's return to the WWE title picture. Raw opened with Lashley and MVP assuming they would naturally be entered into the triple threat title match at Day 1, but that wasn't the case, as Adam Pearce laid out the challenge. Lashley would have to beat Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, and Big E on the same night to qualify. This was a mammoth task even for the Almighty, though the one flaw is that the destructive, dominant former WWE champion was presented as an underdog. Owens was the first to face Lashley, and in a bizarrely one-sided match, KO tapped out to the Hurt Lock before the hold was fully applied. Defending himself to Seth Rollins, Owens said he knew he wasn't going to get out of the hold, so he chose not to add any further damage to his body, and it was now up to Seth to stop Lashley's path to Day 1. When Owens attacked Rollins at ringside, causing Lashley to get DQ'd, it appeared his journey was over, until Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville restarted the match as no disqualifications and said that all further Lashley matches on the show would be the same. Within seconds, Lashley speared Rollins for the win, and in the main event, MVP took full advantage of the no DQ rule, assisting Lashley to get the pin on Big E, the man who took the Almighty's WWE Championship. Now, Day 1 will have a WWE title Fatal 4-Way match, but it's still expected that Big E will retain, possibly pinning Kevin Owens if he chooses to leave the WWE at the end of January. The addition of Lashley will add another layer to the match, and both he and Rollins could remain in contention by the 2022 Royal Rumble, after what's sure to be a show-stealing WWE title match at Day 1. Lashley's return to the WWE title picture is a breath of fresh air for the Almighty, who has done little since losing the title and losing to Goldberg, and he may soon have some serious backup. During the show in Minnesota, Lashley shared a fist bump with Gable Steveson, the Olympic gold medalist turned WWE signing, who was drafted to Raw in October. WWE is biding their time with Steveson and treating him like a big deal, and when he does become a full-time member of the WWE Raw roster, it's clear that he will receive a massive push, perhaps as the next member of the Hurt Business. Last night, Raw was in the XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota, a venue with a capacity of 20,554. WWE can't sell every seat in the building because a large portion of the stadium is needed for backstage, but this week's show sold very poorly. According to fans in attendance, people were moved to the hard camera so that the venue looked packed, which left approximately half the arena completely empty. It's very unusual for this amount of seats to be empty, and while ticket sales have been sluggish in some cities, such as Long Island, that was because there was stiff competition in town. The War of Long Island, which saw Raw and AEW Dynamite use the same arena, saw the Red brand draw over 5,800 fans, even with ticket discounts, while Dynamite drew 9,500. AEW ran their Full Gear pay-per-view in Minneapolis, Minnesota last month, and they drew over 10,000 tickets, an impressive number because Minneapolis is considered a strong WWE market. For comparison, WrestleTix reports that Raw drew just over 4,600 fans to the XL Energy Center, and fans took to Twitter to speculate why so many seats were empty. It should be mentioned that WWE does typically choose much larger arenas compared to other companies, and it's expected for a random Raw to do worse than an AEW pay-per-view. Nevertheless, moving fans around to give the illusion of a stacked show is something WWE doesn't want to do at all, and it's just the latest bit of worrying news from the sports entertainment empire. With WWE releasing talent consistently over the past 2 years, it's hardly surprising that many have ended up in AEW, with Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole debuting it All Out. Their debuts came mere weeks after CM Punk and weeks before Ring of Honor's Jay Lethal appeared at Full Gear, as Tony Khan loves surprising the fans. Speaking to Christopher Walker of DAZN to promote this Wednesday's Winter is Coming special, Khan alluded to both the WWE releases and ROH going on hiatus, teasing that his roster may soon get even bigger. I'm more than aware that there's a number of free agents out there, wrestlers I admire too, but I've got to say that you just have to keep watching over these next few weeks and not just Winter is Coming. There's the Holiday Bash special from Greensboro, North Carolina. That includes the Christmas Day Rampage. We have the last ever episode on TNT, followed by the debut episode on TBS. There's Battle of the Belts coming in January. Just last week, Kyle O'Reilly, Johnny Gargano, and countless Ring of Honor stars became free agents, which is still the status of Bray Wyatt, and only time will tell who Tony Khan can sign in the coming weeks. Jeff Hardy is also a free agent after being released from WWE last week, but he'll have to wait 90 days before he competes anywhere else. Details are still scarce as to the circumstances behind Jeff's release, but we do know it came after an incident at a live event where Jeff walked off into the crowd during a match, prompting security to follow him. Matt Hardy has urged fans not to jump to conclusions about his brother's condition, but has said that Fightful's report of Jeff refusing rehab is true, as the former WWE champion felt it wasn't needed. During a recent House Hardy Twitch stream, Matt confirmed that Jeff took a drug test, but said that the results haven't come back yet, but he expects his brother to be completely clean. If it turns out Jeff is clean, then WWE will have potentially jumped the gun by releasing him and could even offer to re-sign him to a new contract. Whether Jeff would re-sign after being released is another matter, and we've seen plenty of wrestlers released from WWE for far lesser matters than a failed drug test. In the case of many wrestlers, they've been released with no reason at all, and we'll have a clearer picture what the future holds when the results of this test are known for sure. Jeff has kept quiet since his release from WWE, but we now have photographic proof that the former world champion is doing okay. On Twitter, Matt shared a Hardy family picture where Jeff looks to be doing well, and we're pleased that he seems happy despite the difficult circumstances of the past week. Even before Jeff was released, some fans were calling on him to sign with AEW, which seems far more likely now that he's no longer employed by Vince McMahon. A 90-day non-compete clause will be in effect until March 9th, 2022, but there's some who don't want to see Hardy back in the ring at all. Speaking on the latest episode of the 83 Weeks podcast, Eric Bischoff, who worked with Jeff both in WWE and TNA, spoke of Hardy's release and said that the former world champion should hang up his boots for good. I hope he gets whatever help he needs. I hope he gets out of wrestling. I don't want to see him go to AEW. I don't want to see him go back to WWE. I would hope for Jeff's sake that Jeff doesn't want to go to AEW or Jeff doesn't want to go back to WWE. There's a time when in order to heal and in order to stay healthy, you have to leave. He's only 40-something years old, he's young, he's still got a whole lifetime ahead of him, and there's a point where you're struggling and you have these situations that you find yourself in and you're struggling with the same issue over and over again. You have 6 months or a year where things are under control and then you fall back into it again. You have to ask yourself, is it time to change my world? Is it time to change my environment? Is it time to change what I do for a living? Is it time to change where I put my priorities? Because if putting your priorities and being involved in this industry is not helping your situation and possibly making it more difficult, then it's time to walk away. He's still young, I'm sure he's made a ton of money. Man, there's a time to walk away and put your health and family first. Only Jeff Hardy can make the decision as to when he'll leave the ring, as we're sure plenty of promotions would gladly pay for such a big name, and though everyone in wrestling wishes him the very best, what the very best actually is seems to be very different to different people. One potential match is for the Hardy Boys to face the Young Bucks in AEW, and that's a match the former AEW World Tag Team Champions are hoping for. On Twitter, the official account of the Bucks shared an old Matt Hardy tweet in which the then TNA World Tag Team Champions challenged the Bucks, and in their tweet, the Jackson brothers shared a drooling emoji. The idea of the Bucks facing the Hardys would certainly get a lot of fans drooling, but for now, Jeff is waiting out his non-compete clause before he does anything else. Back to Raw, as the feud between Becky Lynch and Liv Morgan has become one of the hottest recent programs on Raw, despite the gap in mic skills between the two. Despite this, the relatable Morgan has remained a popular babyface, while Lynch has done a perfect job as a heel. This week saw Morgan demand a rematch at Day 1, and once again Becky enhanced her heel status as she attacked the young superstar before accepting the challenge. With how popular she's gotten lately, Morgan is likely to win the Raw Women's title, even if that win doesn't come at Day 1, as the popular babyface has proven to be the perfect foil for the man whose heel turn continues to impress audiences week after week. Raw may have seen Lynch make a statement at the expense of Liv Morgan, but the man suffered an embarrassing moment during their brawl. Fighting the woman she beat last week in their title match, Lynch slipped on the floor outside the ring, and with Morgan nowhere near her, it was clear she suffered a botch. As for Morgan, she still sold the kick as though it connected, even though it was clear that Lynch didn't make any contact. Fortunately, Lynch was able to move on and end the segment the way it was planned, but this was quite the botch for the usually ultra-cool Raw Women's Champion. This week's show saw Austin Theory cost Finn Balor a match in the hopes of impressing Mr. McMahon, but the chairman of WWE was far more interested in his pencil. Yes, that's right, for the amount of effort WWE is spending each week by having Theory and McMahon share segments, this week saw the CEO focus on the eraser on his pencil in a segment that, like others between the two, had some poor audio. Yes, getting the rub from Vince McMahon is a big deal, but some of these segments are very confusing, and one may argue they're doing as much harm as good for the man many consider to be a future WWE champion. While Maryse returned to WWE in 2016, she immediately aligned herself with The Miz, an obvious pairing since they're a real-life married couple. This week, though, the It couple split, culminating with Maryse slapping her husband in a strange move for everyone involved. Maryse definitely adds a lot to The Miz's presentation, and for them to go their separate ways seems like a strange decision. It's weird to see Maryse get upset with The Miz's cowardly actions this week, where he used her as a shield, as it's hardly the first time he's done just that. That said, the pair are always entertaining on TV, and everything about their segment, barring the end, was great. We can only hope that there's an endgame for this storyline, and that it's not something they decided on the fly this week. And we're ending today with Alpha Academy, who impressed in a major way on last night's Raw. The show was meant to feature the finals of the Rk-Bro-Nament, which would have seen either the Street Profits or the Mysterios earn a Raw Tag title match, but that didn't happen after reported injuries to both teams. What we did see was Otis face Riddle, who was told to focus on his opponent by Randy Orton, but that didn't pay off for the original Bro. Otis defeated Riddle in what was one of the most shocking moments of the entire night. This is a positive development because Otis's potential has been wasted by the company on so many occasions. From splitting heavy machinery up for no rhyme or reason, to have him win and lose the Money in the Bank briefcase. They haven't done right by him at all, but this is a step in the right direction, or at least we hope it is. Chad Gable would eventually end the segment on the receiving end of an RKO by Orton, but the night belonged to Alpha Academy, in what could be the start of a filler feud until the Rk-Bro-Nament finals happen. Well guys, that's our news for today. Please share your comments below. Also hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to receive all notifications. And as always, thanks for watching.